I thought raising another man's child for 2 years was the worst betrayal possible, until I discovered my wife had been sleeping with 15 different men during our marriage. The DNA test was just the beginning of a nightmare that destroyed everything I believed about love and trust. My name is Daniel Hopkins. I'm 43 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years building my career as director of sales for Meridian Pharmaceuticals. I thought I had it all figured out. The house in Westfield, 2 kids, and a wife who still turned heads. Theodore, our 18-year-old, had just started college. Little Dylan, barely 2 years old, was the surprise that supposedly saved our marriage. That Tuesday started like any other. I was reviewing territory assignments when Isabella breezed through, car keys jingling in her manicured fingers. She looked radiant, too radiant for someone heading to lunch with book club friends. "I'll be back around 3, Isabella announced, not really looking at me. Meeting the girls at that new bistro downtown. Something in her tone made me glance up. She was wearing the black dress I bought her for our anniversary, makeup done with precision. Her auburn hair was styled perfectly. "Since when does book club require formal wear?" I asked. Isabella's laugh sounded forced. "Can't a woman dress up for her friends? Besides, Margaret said they might stop by that art gallery afterward." She kissed my forehead a quick, distracted peck, and was gone. The scent of her perfume lingered, something expensive and unfamiliar. I sat there staring at the empty doorway. In the back of my mind, doubts I'd been suppressing for months began to surface. The late-night texts she claimed were from her sister. The way she'd started scheduling Dylan's daycare pickups around mysterious appointments. But it was the envelope in my desk drawer that really haunted me. DNA testing results for Dylan, ordered during a moment of weakness when the math just didn't add up. Isabella had been distant right around the time Dylan would have been conceived. We'd been trying for another child for over a year, and suddenly, after one bitter fight about my work schedule, she announced she was pregnant. My hands trembled as I pulled out the sealed envelope. I told myself I was being paranoid, but as I tore it open and scanned the official letterhead, my world tilted on its axis. The words came into sharp, devastating focus. Probability of paternity, 0%. Dylan wasn't mine. I walked to the kitchen, moving like a man underwater. On the kitchen table, I carefully placed the DNA results face up, right where Isabella would see them the moment she walked in. Then I waited. At 3:47 p.m., I heard her car in the driveway. She came through the front door humming, actually humming, like she just won the lottery. Her cheeks were flushed, lipstick fresh. "Daniel, I'm home," Isabella called out, her voice bright with artificial cheer. She practically floated into the kitchen, still riding the high of whatever had happened during her lunch date. But the moment her eyes landed on the papers spread across our kitchen table, everything changed. The humming stopped. The flush drained from her face. "What is this?" Isabella whispered, though we both knew exactly what it was. The silence stretched between us like a loaded gun. Isabella stared at the DNA results, her face cycling through emotions I'd never seen before. Shock, fear, calculation. Her manicured fingers trembled as she picked up the papers, scanning the scientific jargon as if willing the words to change. "Where did you get this?" Isabella asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Does it matter?" I replied, standing up from my chair. "The question isn't where I got it. The question is whose son Dylan really is." Isabella set the papers down carefully, like they might explode. She walked to the kitchen sink, gripping the granite countertop with both hands. Her knuckles went white. "Daniel, I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "Can you?" "Because I've been sitting here for hours trying to figure out how you explain away a 0% match. There's no gray area here, Isabella. Either Dylan is my son, or he isn't." She turned around, and for the first time since I'd known her, Isabella looked defeated. The confident woman who'd walked out this morning was gone, replaced by someone who looked cornered. "It's not what you think," Isabella said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then tell me what it is," I demanded. "Tell me exactly what it is, because right now I'm thinking my wife of 20 years has been living a lie for the past 2 years. I'm thinking that every time I changed Dylan's diaper, every sleepless night, every proud moment watching him take his first steps, it was all built on deception." Isabella flinched at the word deception like I'd slapped her. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. The silence was deafening. "How long?" I asked quietly. Daniel, please dash. How long have you been cheating on me? The question hung in the air like smoke. Isabella's shoulders sagged, and she looked older somehow, as if the weight of her secrets had finally become too much to carry. It wasn't supposed to happen, she whispered. That's not an answer. How long? Isabella closed her eyes. 3 years. The number hit me like a physical blow. 3 years. Dylan was 2 years old, which meant she'd been unfaithful for his entire life. And then some. Who? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Isabella's face twisted with something that might have been guilt or might have been annoyance at getting caught. Preston Clark. Preston, my business associate. The pharmaceutical rep who'd been coming to our house for barbecues and holiday parties for the past 5 years. The man who'd brought Dylan a stuffed elephant when he was born, who'd shaken my hand and congratulated me on becoming a father again. Preston, I repeated, tasting the name like poison. Preston Clark. Isabella nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone who'd been caught red-handed and was finally facing consequences. Daniel, I never meant for it to go this far, Isabella said, stepping toward me. I held up my hand, stopping her in her tracks. Don't. Just don't. You don't get to play the victim here. You made choices, Isabella. Every single day, for 3 years, you made choices. You were never home. She exploded suddenly, her mask finally slipping completely. You were always working, always traveling, always putting your career first. I was lonely, Daniel. I was forgotten. So you decided to sleep with Preston and pass off his child as mine. Isabella's face flushed red. I didn't know. When I got pregnant, I thought, I hoped. You hope what? That you could keep lying forever. I hoped I could fix things before you found out. Isabella finished, her voice breaking. I stared at her, amazed by the audacity. Fix things? You mean continue lying to me while raising another man's child in my house? It's not that simple, Daniel. You don't understand, Dash. Then make me understand, I said, my voice deadly calm. Explain to me how sleeping with Preston Clark for 3 years is complicated. Explain how letting me believe Dylan was my son is anything other than fraud. Isabella wiped her eyes, smearing her perfect makeup. When Theodore left for college, everything changed. You threw yourself into work, even more. I felt invisible. Preston was there. He listened to me. He made me feel alive again. So this is my fault. No, she said quickly. But you weren't present, Daniel. Even when you were home, you weren't really there. I walked to the kitchen counter and pulled out my phone. Call him. What? Call Preston. Right now. I want to hear you tell him that I know about Dylan. I want to hear you tell him that his son has been living in my house, sleeping in the crib I assembled, calling me daddy. Isabella's face went white. Daniel, please don't do this. Why? Are you protecting him or yourself? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I scrolled through her phone contacts until I found Preston's number and hit dial, putting it on speaker. Hey, beautiful. Preston's voice filled our kitchen. Missing me already? The casual intimacy in his tone hit me like a sledgehammer. This wasn't a recent fling. This was an established relationship. Isabella looked like she wanted to disappear. Preston, I said into the phone. This is Daniel Hopkins. The silence on the other end stretched for 10 seconds before Preston spoke again, his voice completely different now. Daniel, we need to talk, I said. All 3 of us. Tonight. Daniel, look, I can explain, Dash. You can explain how you've been sleeping with my wife and fathered a child that I've been raising for 2 years. Yeah, I'd like to hear that explanation. Isabella grabbed the phone and ended the call. Her hand was shaking. He doesn't know about Dylan, she said quietly. I felt the blood drain from my face. What do you mean he doesn't know? I never told him. When I got pregnant, I wasn't sure who the father was. There were others. Others. The word hung in the air like poison gas. How many others, Isabella? She couldn't look at me. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. How many men were you sleeping with when Dylan was conceived? Daniel, please, Dash. Answer me. 3, she whispered. Maybe 4. I was confused, I was angry, I was Dash. I didn't let her finish. I walked out of the kitchen, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. Where are you going? Isabella called after me. To find out who Dylan's real father is. I drove straight to Preston's office, building downtown. The 40-minute drive gave me time to process what Isabella had admitted. 3 or 4 men. During the time Dylan was conceived, my wife had been conducting multiple affairs simultaneously. Preston worked for Hartwell Pharmaceuticals on the 15th floor. I've been there many times for business meetings, but never like this. Never as the betrayed husband coming to confront my wife's lover. The receptionist tried to stop me, but I pushed past her and walked directly to Preston's corner office. He was on a conference call when I opened his door without knocking. "I'll call you back," Preston said into his headset, his eyes never leaving mine. He was a tall man, well-dressed, the kind of guy who probably played golf every weekend and drove a BMW. "Daniel, we should talk about this privately." "We are talking about this privately," I said, closing the door behind me. "Unless you'd prefer to discuss your affair with my wife in front of your colleagues." Preston loosened his tie. He looked nervous, which gave me some satisfaction. "Look, I know how this looks, but Isabella and I, it's complicated." "It's not complicated at all. You've been sleeping with my wife. The only question is whether Dylan is your son." Preston's face went pale. "What?" "Isabella just told me she was sleeping with 3 or 4 different men around the time Dylan was conceived. DNA test says he's not mine. So either he's yours, or he belongs to one of her other boyfriends." Preston sat down heavily in his chair. "I had no idea about any of this. I thought it was just between us." "Just between you? There's nothing just about sleeping with another man's wife for 3 years. 3 years." Preston looked genuinely shocked. "Daniel, I've only been seeing Isabella for about 8 months." That stopped me cold. 8 months. But Isabella had said 3 years. Either she was lying to me, or she was lying to him. "She told me 3 years," I said. Preston shook his head. "No way. We met at that pharmaceutical conference in Chicago last fall. I remember because it was right after Halloween. We talked at the hotel bar, and one thing led to another. 8 months. Which meant Dylan definitely wasn't Preston's child. Who else has she been seeing?" I asked. "I don't know," Preston said, but I could see in his eyes that he was starting to understand the scope of Isabella's deceptions. "She told me you two were having problems, that you were basically separated." "I never would have." "You never would have what?" "Slept with a married woman." Preston didn't answer that. I pulled out my phone and called Isabella. She answered on the first ring. "Daniel, where are you? You need to come home so we can talk about this." "I'm with Preston," I said. "He says you've only been seeing him for 8 months. Care to explain the discrepancy?" The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. "Isabella, you there?" "Yes," she said quietly. "I'm here. Who was it 3 years ago? Who were you sleeping with when our marriage was supposedly solid?" Another long pause. "Isabella, answer me." "My trainer," she whispered. "Victor from a gym." Victor Rivera ran the elite fitness center downtown. I'd seen him a few times when I'd picked up Isabella from her workout sessions, back when I thought she was actually exercising. He was one of those guys who looked like he lived in the gym, all muscle and swagger, the kind of man who probably had half the suburban wives in town eating out of his hand. I found him in the weight room, spotting some college kid on the bench press. He was exactly the type Isabella would have found irresistible during one of her lonely phases. Younger than me, built like a linebacker, with the kind of cocky confidence that appeals to women questioning their life choices. "Victor," I called out, walking across the gym floor. "We need to talk." He looked up, recognized me immediately, and I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe. Or just the natural wariness of a man who'd been sleeping with married women long enough to know that husbands eventually show up. "Mr. Hopkins," he said, helping the kid rack the weight. "What brings you by?" "I think you know." Victor gestured toward his office, a small room overlooking the main gym floor. I followed him in and closed the door behind us. "Isabella told me," I said without preamble. "About 3 years ago. About you." Victor leaned against his desk, arms crossed. He didn't deny it, which I respected more than I probably should have. "Look, man, I'm sorry about that. It was a mistake. She said you two were having problems. They always say that, don't they?" I asked. "The married women who end up in here looking for some excitement." Victor had the decency to look uncomfortable. It wasn't like that with Isabella. She was genuinely unhappy. Unhappy enough to sleep with her personal trainer while her husband worked 60-hour weeks to pay for those training sessions. "Hey, I didn't know about your work schedule. I just knew she was lonely." I pulled out my phone and showed him Dylan's picture. "This is my son. Except DNA says he's not mine." Isabella was sleeping with multiple men when he was conceived. Was one of them you? Victor stared at the photo, and I watched his face change as he processed what I was telling him. Multiple men? According to her, yes. You, Preston Clark from Hartwell Pharmaceuticals, and at least one or two others she can't seem to remember clearly. Jesus, Victor muttered. I had no idea she was. I knew about her husband, obviously, but I didn't know about anyone else. So it's possible Dylan is yours. Victor looked at the photo again, then at me. When was he born? March 15th, 2 years ago. Victor was quiet for a moment, doing the math. It's possible, he said finally. The timing works. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I want a DNA test. You, me, and Dylan. I need to know who his father is. Man, I don't know if that's such a good idea. Why? Because you don't want to pay child support for the next 16 years. No, Victor said, and there was something in his voice that made me pay attention. Because there might be more than just me and Preston you need to test. I stared at him. What do you mean? Victor ran his hand through his hair. Isabella wasn't exactly discreet about her activities. There were rumors around the gym, stories about her, and some of the other trainers, some of the members. I thought it was just talk, but now. Now what? Now I'm thinking maybe the talk was true. I drove home in a daze, Victor's words echoing in my head. Multiple trainers. Multiple members. Isabella hadn't just been having affairs. She'd been conducting them with the systematic efficiency of someone running a small business. When I walked into our house, Isabella was sitting at the kitchen table with Dylan on her lap. He was eating Cheerios with his tiny fingers, babbling happily in that way 2-year-olds do. Looking at him now, knowing what I knew, was like looking at a stranger. Where have you been? Isabella asked. I was worried. I want to see Victor. Isabella's face went pale. Dylan chose that moment to throw a handful of Cheerios on the floor, laughing at the mess he'd made. What did he tell you? She asked quietly. He confirmed your story about 3 years ago. He also told me there might have been others. Lots of others. Isabella set Dylan down, and he toddled toward his toy box in the corner. Daniel, I can explain Dash. Can you? Because I'm starting to think you can't even keep track of all the men you were sleeping with. Victor thinks there were other trainers, other gym members. Is that true? Isabella couldn't meet my eyes. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Help me understand how my wife became the gym bicycle while I was working my tail off to provide for a family. Don't call me that, she snapped, but there was no real fire in it. Then tell me the truth. All of it. Every man, every affair, every lie you've told me over the past 3 years. Isabella was quiet for a long moment, watching Dylan play with his blocks. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. It started with Victor. I was feeling neglected, unappreciated. He made me feel desirable again. And then there was Jake from the front desk. That was only a few times. Who else? Dr. Harrison from your company. Remember the Christmas party 2 years ago? I remembered. Dr. Harrison was married with 3 kids. I'd introduced him to Isabella myself. Anyone else? A few of the other trainers. Some guys I met at bars when I told you I was out with girlfriends. I was staring at a woman I didn't recognize. The mother of my children, the person I'd shared my bed and my dreams with for 20 years, had been living a double life that would make a spy jealous. How many? I asked. Daniel, does it matter? It matters to me. How many men have you slept with since we've been married? Isabella looked down at her hands. I stopped counting after 15. 15. The number hit me like a physical blow. Not 15 over the course of our entire marriage. 15 in addition to our normal relationship. 15 men who had touched my wife while I was working late or traveling for business or taking care of our children. Dylan could belong to any of them, I said. Isabella nodded. I'm sorry. Sorry. After 20 years of marriage, after destroying our family, after making me raise another man's child for 2 years, she was sorry. I looked at Dylan, still playing with his blocks, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around him. He was an innocent victim in all this, just like Theodore, just like me. Pack your bags, I said quietly. Daniel Dash, pack your bags and get out of my house. Take Dylan with you. You can't throw us out. This is my home too. I walked over to where she was sitting and leaned down so we were eye to eye. This house is in my name. The cars are in my name. The bank accounts are in my name. Everything you see here exists Because I worked for it while you were busy working your way through half the men in town. Isabella's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. You have 1 hour, I said. After that, I'm calling the police. The next morning, I called the best divorce attorney in the city, Rebecca Thompson, a woman who'd built her reputation destroying cheating spouses in court. Her consultation fee was $500 for an hour, but money wasn't an object anymore. Isabella had made sure of that with her reckless spending on affairs. Mr. Hopkins, Rebecca said, reviewing the file I prepared overnight. This is quite comprehensive. DNA results, bank statements, documented infidelity with multiple partners. You've done my job for me. I want full custody of Theodore, and I want Isabella to get nothing. Rebecca leaned back in her leather chair. Theodore is 18. Custody isn't an issue there. But with Dylan, even though he's not biologically yours, you've been acting as his father for 2 years. The court might still consider you responsible for support. That possibility had kept me awake all night, even if his mother was sleeping with half the city when he was conceived. Unfortunately, yes. The best interests of the child supersede martial misconduct in many cases. However, given the documented pattern of deception and infidelity, we can probably minimize your financial obligations. My phone buzzed. A text from Isabella. Daniel, please call me. We need to talk about Dylan. I showed the message to Rebecca. She's panicking. Probably realized she can't afford to raise a child without your income. Good, I said. Let her panic. Rebecca smiled. The kind of smile that made me glad she was on my side. There's something else we need to discuss. Your wife's pattern of behavior suggests she may have exposed you to health risks. I recommend comprehensive testing. The thought hadn't occurred to me, but she was right. 15 different men over 3 years. Who knew what Isabella might have brought home? I'll schedule the test today, I said. One more thing. Your wife mentioned multiple affairs at your workplace. If any of those relationships affected your professional reputation, we can pursue additional damages for loss of earning capacity. I thought about Dr. Harrison from the Christmas party. How many of my colleagues knew about Isabella's activities? How many business relationships have been compromised? I'll document everything I can remember. Rebecca nodded. Perfect. We'll file tomorrow. Given the evidence, I expect your wife's attorney will push for a quick settlement. She's in an extremely vulnerable position. As I left Rebecca's office, my phone rang. Theodore. Dad? Mom called crying, saying you threw her out. What's going on? I've been dreading this conversation too. Son, there are things about your mother that you don't know. Things I wish I didn't know. Like what? She's been unfaithful. For years. Dylan isn't my biological son. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Are you serious? Theodore finally asked. I have DNA proof. And evidence of multiple affairs. Jesus, Dad. I'm sorry. Are you okay? That question almost broke me. My 18-year-old son was asking if I was okay while his world was falling apart too. I will be, I said. We both will be. Isabella tried calling 17 times that day. I didn't answer. By evening, she'd switched tactics and sent Theodore to the house as her messenger. Dad, Mom says you won't talk to her. She's staying at some motel with Dylan, and she's scared. I looked at my son, tall, serious, with my eyes but Isabella's stubborn chin. He deserved the truth. Theodore, sit down. There are things you need to know. I showed him everything. The DNA results, the bank statements, the timeline of affairs that spanned his entire high school career. Theodore listened without interruption, his face growing darker with each revelation. 15 men, he said when I finished. At least. Possibly more. Theodore ran his hands through his hair. All those times she said she was at book club or shopping with friends. She was with other men. And Dylan really isn't your son? No. He's not your brother either. Not biologically. Theodore was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was hard. What do you need me to do? The question caught me off guard. What? To help you. In the divorce, I mean. Do you need me to testify or something? I felt a surge of pride. My son was choosing sides, and he was choosing me. I might need you to confirm some timelines. About your mother's absences, her behavior changes. Theodore nodded grimly. She was different after I started high school. More secretive, more defensive. I thought it was just empty nest syndrome or something. It was something, all right. My phone rang. Isabella again. Answer it, Theodore said. Let me talk to her. I put the call on speaker. Daniel, thank God. Isabella's voice filled the room. "I've been trying to reach you all day. We need to discuss Dylan's situation." "Hello, Mother," Theodore said coldly. "Theodore? What are you doing there?" "Daniel, are you involving our son in this?" "I'm involving myself," Theodore said. "Dad, show me everything. The DNA test, the bank records, all of it." "Theodore, you don't understand, Dash. I understand that you lied to our entire family for years. I understand that you destroyed Dad's life while he was working to support us. It's not that simple, Dash. It is that simple." Theodore cut her off. "You're a cheater and a liar. And Dylan isn't my brother." "Theodore, please, Dash. Don't call here again unless it's through lawyers," Theodore said, and hung up. I stared at my son, amazed by his strength. At 18, he was more of a man than some people twice his age. "I'm proud of you," I said. "I'm proud of you too, Dad, for not letting her get away with it." That night, Isabella sent one final text. "You've turned my own son against me. I'll never forgive you for that." I showed it to Theodore. He laughed, a bitter sound that reminded me how much he'd grown up in one day. "She still doesn't get it," he said. "She turned me against her. You just told me the truth." 6 months later, I sat in Rebecca Thompson's office reviewing the final divorce settlement. Isabella's lawyer had fought hard, but the evidence was overwhelming. Multiple affairs, financial deception, and paternity fraud had destroyed any sympathy a judge might have had for her. "She gets nothing," Rebecca said, sliding the papers across her desk. "No alimony, no share of the house, no retirement benefits." The judge was particularly harsh about the Dylan situation. The custody arrangement was unusual but fair. Since Dylan wasn't biologically mine, I had no legal obligation to him. However, I'd grown attached to the little boy who'd called me daddy for 2 years. The court allowed supervised visitation if I chose to maintain contact. "What about her financial situation?" I asked. "She's moved in with Preston Clark. Turns out he decided to leave his wife after all this came out. They're both unemployed now. His company fired him for the affair scandal." Karma had a sense of humor. "Isabella tried one last manipulation," Rebecca continued. "She claimed Dylan was asking for you, said it was cruel to abandon a child who thought you were his father. And I reminded the judge that Isabella created this situation by lying about paternity. The court doesn't reward fraud with financial benefits." Theodore knocked and entered the office. At 19, he'd matured rapidly through this ordeal. He was studying business administration and working part-time at a local pharmaceutical company, away from the drama. "How'd it go, Dad?" "It's over. Your mother signed everything this morning." Theodore nodded. "Good. She made her choices." We drove home in comfortable silence. The house felt different now, peaceful without the undercurrent of deception. I'd redecorated, removing traces of Isabella's presence. It was mine now, truly mine. That evening, Theodore and I barbecued on the deck while discussing his college plans. "Do you miss her?" he asked suddenly. "I miss who I thought she was," I said honestly. "But that person never really existed." "Do you regret the marriage?" "I considered that. No. The marriage gave me you, and 20 years of experiences that shaped who I am. I regret trusting her longer than I should have, but I don't regret trying to make it work." Theodore smiled. "You're stronger than I thought you were. So are you." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Daniel, this is Preston. Isabella and I are struggling financially. Could you help with Dylan's expenses? He misses you." I showed the message to Theodore, who laughed. "The audacity is incredible." I deleted the message without responding. Dylan wasn't my responsibility anymore. That was the price of Isabella's deceptions. Later that night, I looked through old photo albums, not with sadness, but with perspective. Every picture told a different story now. Isabella's smile seemed fake, her affection calculated. But my love for Theodore was real. My efforts to build a family were genuine. I'd survived the destruction of my marriage and emerged stronger. My career had actually improved. Colleagues respected how I'd handled the situation with dignity. My relationship with Theodore was closer than ever. Isabella had tried to destroy me with her lies, but she'd only destroyed herself. I was free, financially secure, and surrounded by people who actually cared about me. That was the best revenge of all. 2 years after the divorce, I was a different man. Not broken, not bitter, just wiser. I'd learned to trust my instincts and not ignore red flags for the sake of keeping peace. Theodore graduated college with honors and landed a job with a respected pharmaceutical company in Chicago. He visited monthly, and we'd grown closer through shared adversity. "Any regrets about the divorce?" he asked during one visit. "None," I said. "Your mother taught me an important lesson about the difference between loving someone and enabling their destructive behavior." I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that Isabella and Preston's relationship had imploded within a year. He discovered she was still seeing other men, including Victor from the gym. Some people never learn. Dylan was 4 now, living with Isabella in a small apartment across town. I'd seen him once at a grocery store, a cute kid who didn't recognize me. Isabella had quickly pushed her cart in the other direction, avoiding eye contact. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no obligation. That chapter was closed. My career had flourished post-divorce. Without the stress of Isabella's chaos, I'd focused entirely on work and been promoted to regional director. The salary increase was substantial, and every penny belonged to me. I'd started dating again, carefully, deliberately. Sarah was a nurse at the local hospital, divorced with one teenage daughter. She was honest, straightforward, and appreciated stability after her own tumultuous marriage. "What's the most important thing you learned from your divorce?" Sarah asked over dinner one evening. "That love without honesty isn't love at all. It's just dependency disguised as romance." Sarah smiled. "That's very wise. Wisdom bought with pain," I said, "but worth the price." We were taking things slowly, building trust gradually. After Isabella's deceptions, I'd never again mistake passion for character or ignore obvious warning signs for the sake of keeping peace. Theodore approved of Sarah, which mattered to me. "She's nothing like Mom," he said. "She actually listens when you talk." That simple observation captured everything. Isabella had been performing for 20 years, while Sarah was simply being herself. Looking back, I realized Isabella had done me a favor by revealing her true nature. If she'd been more discreet, I might have wasted decades more on someone incapable of genuine love. The house was quiet now, but it was honest quiet. No lies hiding behind closed doors, no deceptions masquerading as marriage. Just peace, authenticity, and the possibility of building something real with someone worthy of trust. I'd survived betrayal and emerged victorious. Not because I destroyed Isabella, she destroyed herself, but because I'd refused to let her destruction spread to me. That was true strength. That was true victory.